Hello and welcome back to my RC channel. I'm Andy RC and today I'm going to be building and setting up the 3B128. This is a 3-inch racer kit and it's quite an unusual kit in that you are given the frame, the motors, the FPV camera and accessories such as propellers, although these aren't the stock propellers, and connectors and things, but everything else you have to source yourself, so this is going to be a premium build, this one. So for the guts, I'm using a HLGRC stack. I think they call it the XJB425. So we have 25 amp 4-in-1 BL Heli S ESCs, and then that connects directly to an Omnibus F4 flight controller with Betaflight on-screen display. And then I'm using a VTX03 from Bandicoot, so it's a switchable VTX with a sleeve dipole antenna. And then I'm using a XM Plus for the receiver. So the motors, they are huge motors. They are 3B branded. And I think I mentioned before that the designer of the Emax red bottoms is responsible for the 3B motors. And they are 1606 3500 kV motors. Now, when I initially showed this in one of my news videos, people were saying that these motors get incredibly hot on a 4S, and you're right. However, I have talked to the source, which is Underground FPV, and they are designed to run hot. So I've actually done a quick hover test with this on a 4S, and yeah, they get so hot you can't even touch them, but apparently that is fine, and that is why I'm not using the stock props either, because apparently you can go heavier on the pitch. These are the GEP-RC props. They are a 30-42, and apparently even you can run a GoPro on that as well, and the amp draw will be 22 amps, so it should be fine with the 25 amp ESC board there. So you might think that this model looks heavy, but it's actually not too bad. It comes in at 152 grams. I think this model was released before the Micro Swift 2 came out, so I guess you could lose a bit of weight there, but it came with this camera, so I really like this camera. I'm going to try it anyways. So the frame is 128mm, and you get given a battery strap in the kit as well, and it's got an interesting design for the motor. So you just have 3 screws here, and then we have got this extra piece of carbon here that's for protecting the motors as well. And then we've got a silicon battery mat here as well, so really nice touch, really good quality, but yeah, a premium price for this one. Anyway, let's get on to the build. So starting off with the frame, I'm going to take one of the nylon screws that you are given and put it underneath the frame, and then screw in the standoffs. This is for the ESC board to sit on top of, so I'm just placing that over the top so I can solder it up. It needs to go in this way around, so this is the positive and this is the negative pad. You can see we have a little arrow at the front, and that is the front of the copter. I'm then going to tin up all of the solder pads for the ESC board, and I'll just speed that up so you don't have to watch it in slow motion. So they give you a XT30 connector in the package, but it's got these bullets on here, can you see, which is no good for soldering up to wires, so I'm going to switch that out for one I've got. You can see we can solder wires easier to it, so I'm just going to tin up that, and this is the positive and this is the negative side. This is a Hakko soldering iron, by the way, premium soldering iron. And then I am just soldering up some wire. You're not given any wire in the package, so that's the positive and negative going in for that. And then I'm cutting some heat shrink. Again, you're not given any of that either. And then I am using just a candle lighter to shrink that down. Very unprofessional. Next, I'm cutting this to length because there's a recess in the frame for the XT30 connector. And then I'm going to strip those out, and then I'm going to tin that up. I'm going to solder that to the board later though, so we've got room for the motor wires to be soldered up. Just going to move that out of the way for now because now I'm going to fit the motors. So you can see we've got that little piece of carbon that goes on first, and then we need to use the long screws, and then I think it's a 1.5mm hex driver to get those in. The motors are directional, they've got little arrows on them, so you need to make sure that they are going on the right arm. There you can see the little arrows there. And then this is the second one. So yeah, just 3 screws on this motor. Quite unusual, but I like it. Yeah. So yeah, continuing with the rest of the motors there. And I'm not using thread lock here, but I am tightening them up really tight. Shouldn't have any problems there with these premium motors. So yeah, in goes the last motor there. Again, just getting the direction right. So next I'm putting the ESC board back on. You have to make sure it goes in the right way, and then I'm going to cut all of the wires to length just using some cutters here, and I'm soldering everything straight. And if you do that with this stack, then everything spins the right way anyway, so no need to change anything in BL Sweet, but you can do, obviously, so it doesn't really matter too much. But yeah, just cutting those to length, and they're going to solder in at the front and the back of the copter. Next I'm going to use my Eclipse tool, very handy tool for stripping wires, because, oh yeah, it just helps so much because this takes up so much time. I think the build is about 3 hours in total, and of course you're seeing a compressed version down to about, I don't know, 12 minutes, something like that. Yes, they take a lot of editing, these videos do, and there's a lot of cutting, stripping and tinning and soldering. Yeah, there's a lot of work goes into this. So now I'm going to tin up the motors individually. As I say, silicone wires. It's a really nice kit, premium kit, but really nice. Then I'm just going to solder all these up straight. People love to have a go at my soldering technique. I don't care, and they love to mention how shaky my hands are. I don't care. It's miniature soldering, you know. So yeah, soldering everything up straight. As I say, the direction was all correct, doing it like this, and no need to change any resources or anything like that. So designed to go in sideways, this board, which is unusual, but there you go. So now I'm soldering in the positive and negative here for the battery, and then I'm going to feed that between the flight controller and the ESC board. You can see it just slots in there nicely. Now I'm going to tin up the flight controller stuff here. That just slots straight onto the pins there. So that one was for the VTX, and then I think this is for the 5 volt for the receiver. I put a little diagram there. And then I think this is S-bus here, and then we've got the ground in there too as well somewhere. And then because I'm using a 5 volt VTX, we have the 5 volt camera port here, but I'm actually going to power the VTX off this, and then the camera is going to get powered from the regulator on the VTX. So yeah, a little bit different, because I think it's VBAT power to the VTX that they're suggesting, which would blow up my VTX. Now I think this is the negative here for the receiver. Just tinning stuff up. So this is the XM Plus here, and I'm just soldering in the signal wire, and then this is the 5 volt, and then the negative, and then you get given a little heat shrink there, and again very unprofessionally using a candle lighter which gets carbon on it and stuff, so use a heat gun if you can, but I'm lazy, I always do this. So then tinning up the signal, the voltage and the ground for this one. And then this is where those solder in. I'll just put the diagram up there, it's not too clear. So that's the 5 volt, that's the negative there, and then the S-bus signal. Then I'm cutting the power cable to the VTX and stripping those two. And then I'm going to tin it, and then those are going to link up to the 5 volt for the camera solder pad. I'm also cutting away the voltage out there of the VTX and just using the iron to get rid of any excess strands there. And then this is the camera wire you're given in the package, and then I'm going to solder the voltage and negative directly to the VTX using the regulator there. So yeah, I've cut that to length and then tinning up all of those. And then with my shaky hands, in goes the voltage and then the ground. Quite tricky that, because the pads are close together, so you know, you don't have to do that. You can just solder in the wires there. And that was the signal going in, so the video, and then this is the positive and the negative going in to power up the VTX. And then I'm going to cut the video out cable there, and then that goes into the back. So yeah, just tin that up, and then that gets soldered on the VTX pad at the back there. So quite a lot of soldering with this one. Now I'm tinning up a wire for a buzzer. You're not given a buzzer in the package, so I am adding this myself, so just tinning all of that up. So we've got the positive there, it's on the longer pin, and then the negative there. And then I'm going to cut up some more heat shrink again. This is my own heat shrink, I think it's 3mm, and then burn everything with my light. That's just to shrink that down. Then tinning up those, yes, lots of tinning, lots of soldering. Your tip needs cleaning, I know. I can just see the comments whilst I'm watching this. So that's the positive and negative for the buzzer. And then you get given these little tiny nuts there. I think they're M2 screws. And I'm just putting all of those on there so everything's nice and tight. And then just some sticky pads here, and that is for the VTX to sit on against my own 3M sticky pad. It's quite tricky on a VTX because you can't really use heat shrink because, yeah, it's not going to like the heat. And then I am putting another sticky pad on there, and that's going to be for the receiver to sit on. It's actually come out really neat, this one. It looks a bit messy in the build, but it's actually come out really neat. So then I'm using a cable tie on the XT30 there to keep it in place. It's nicely recessed, I really like that. And then I'm gonna take my cutters and cut that to length. Remove the sticker on the beeper, and then I'm gonna put the sides in. Now, you need to do these one at a time, as I found out, what you'll see. We got these little metal plates here that clip into the side. Just remove the other side there, because then we got these little hex screws that screw in underneath, and that keeps everything in place. So front and back there, and I'm actually going to fit the camera in here as well because it slides in easier. Just put that to angle and then plug the camera in, and then in goes the other side. It's starting to take shape now. Again, that metal piece on the side. I really like how this frame is constructed. So front and back screws again there, and then a screw in the camera on the other side. You're given all the correct screws and loads of spares as well. Now I'm feeding the XM Plus antenna through the top there, and also the antenna of the VTX, and then screwing that in. They do actually give you a SMA pigtail, but I thought that would be heavier, so I'm just using the stock antenna of this VTX. And then screwing in the top plate there, and this is a cable tie. You've got a spare hole at the back, so I'm going to cable tie up the buzzer. Quite inconvenient for the back there. And then I'm using some cable ties through here for the XM Plus antennas, and one on the other side there, and then I cut those to length against the antennas, and then I'm just taking some, I think it's 3mm tubing again. These are tiny cable ties. They're my cable ties, you're not given those in the kit, and those are going to fit over the top there, nice and neat. And again, I'm going to use my candle lighter to shrink them down and get a load of soot everywhere. It really is best to use a heat gun, but again, I'm lazy, so I just set fire to everything. This is the silicon battery mat. It lines up underneath so the screws don't get in the way. And then this is the battery strap that you're given as well, and that can just feed through there nice and neatly, and we are done with the building part. So next you're going to want to set up a model, so I'm using the Tyrannus here. So I've already set one up. Give it a name. You can give it a model image if you like. No pulses for the receiver and D16 mode for the XM Plus. Now you're going to need to plug a battery into the copter whilst pressing down the bind button on the receiver. There's holes in the top of this copter so you can reach the bind button no problem. So once it's bound you should get a green light. So if I page over to the mixer, I've set up here a mode on the aux 1, so I've got this 3-position switch here for that, so that's going to be angle and acro, and then if you want to use anything else. And then I've got the next one to arm on this 2-position switch here. Then I've got the buzzer on the 3-position switch there, and we should be ready to go into Betaflight. So here we are in the Betaflight configurator. You get it from the Chrome App Store. I've plugged the quadcopter into the computer via a USB cable, and the first thing that I did was flashed Betaflight 3.22. I think it got 3.15 flashed to it out of the box. So I've got Omnibus F4 selected here, and then you want to choose the latest version and set the baud rate to manual at 256. Load the firmware online and then flash the firmware, and I've already done that. So you can see it says COM16 at the top there. I'm going to connect to it and enable expert mode. Now you're going to want to put the copter on a flat surface and calibrate the accelerometer. I've already done that. The serial RX for S-Bus needs to be on the UART1 here, so I've selected that. If we go into configuration, I've got D-Shot 600 selected, and I've got motor stop turned off. I've also set the digital idle to 6, and then I've renamed the copter to 3B128 there. I think all of this is standard. So for the receiver I've got serial based, and then S-Bus down here, and I've got air mode permanently on. I've got on-screen display selected. Also got anti-gravity on there. I actually need to put dynamic filter on there as well. And I will also tick this so that it doesn't beep when it's plugged into the USB. So if I just save that one, because you have to save and reboot every time you make a change. A little bit of a pain. Is it going to reboot? No, I need to connect. Right, so in the power and battery, I set it really low because I don't like any warnings going off, so both minimum cell voltage and warning cell voltage at 2.8. I've got the current meter turned off because it doesn't have one, and then voltage meter as onboard ADC. Failsafe, you don't really need to touch this these days, but it's set to drop, and I have tested that. So before you put the props on, plug a battery in, make sure that it'll arm, turn off the transmitter, make sure it disarms before you fly it. So PID tuning here, I've just put in some stock PIDs here. We'll see how it flies on that. And I've set my rate to 0.8, that's just the setting that I like there. Into the receiver, I've changed it to TAER because that's how my Tyrannus is set up. The XM Plus that I've got has not got the RSSI enabled. I'd need to flash it if I wanted to do that on one of the channels. So the modes, I have got it to ARM on the aux 2, just like the Tyrannus was set up. And then I've got angle here, and then acro over here as well, and then nothing in the third position because this is the only 2 that I'm going to be using. And I've got a beeper on the aux 3 setup there, nothing in adjustments, nothing down here. You can check here whether your motors are turning in the right direction, but with everything soldered straight here, that was fine. So for the on-screen display here, just got a couple of things enabled. I've got the main battery voltage, I've got the flight timer there, And then actually that's not the flight timer, is it? That's the on time. So is it timer 2 that I want? Yeah, flight time. I don't like on time, so I need to change that there. The fly mode there, craft name down there, and average cell voltage as well. And I got some of the stuff turned off down here as well, so I'm gonna need to save that because I've made a change there. So yeah, this camera that it comes with, it's a PAL camera. And then if we go into the CLI, there I will show you the version. So I typed it wrong. Version, can't spell today. So you can see there 3.22. And another command that I like to put in as well is set small underscore angle equals 180 and then save. That is so that the copter will basically arm at any angle. You don't have to wait for the gyro to be flat in order for it to do that. And I didn't need to do anything in BL Suite, but I will just do that. So let's plug in the battery here. Make sure the props are off, and then you also need to make sure that you're properly disconnected from there. And then if I press connect here and then read setup, we'll get all the setup here. But you see, look, everything normal, soldered straight, and yeah, that is all of the setup that you need to see. So now that everything is set up in Betaflight, I've been able to put the propellers on here. So they are directional. You can see there for the clockwise motors we have the black nuts, and then for the counterclockwise we have got the purple nut. It does take a little bit of effort to get those on, so I used a socket set there. And again, the way I remember the props going on is the curve of the prop should always be on the inside. So we've got a curve on the inside, and then flip it around, and a curve on the inside there, and a curve on the inside there as well. Okay, let's go for the Maiden. I always do the Maiden's line of sight, just in case there's any issues. I have done a hover test indoors as well, just to test the heat of those motors. And like I say, they get very hot indoors, so I'm gonna test what they're like outdoors. It's very cold here. So this is a 850 milliamp 4S battery. Let's go for the punch. Oh yeah, got plenty of power. Plenty of power, probably about the same as a 1406 or a 1408 motor, like that HLGRC model. Very similar to that. So I'm not completely sure the motors need to be so big, but plenty of punch there, absolutely loads of punch. Oh yeah. I can see this being another one of my favorites. Wow, oh yeah, that flies nice. And again, loads of power. Probably quite heavy on amps, I would say. So you need some high C batteries. I'm expecting about a 3.5 minute to 4 minute flight time. Of course, if you go full throttle all the time, probably less than that. When I did the punch then, I did feel a little bit of a dip at the top of the throttle, which suggests to me that it is drawing quite a lot of amps, but it recovers. Really snappy. Oh, I like this. Yep, flies like a 5-inch model. Got the power of a 5-inch model. Instant power. Sounds nice as well. Really becoming a fan of the 3-inch size. All you need is 3 inches. It sounds angry. I love these props as well, by the way. I'm gonna get some of these for my 5-inch models. Love the colour, turquoise colour, probably my favourite colour. But so far, I'd say this one's a success. Flies nice, nice build, nice and neat. I like it. Let's come in for a landing. Just see how hot these motors are outside, bearing in mind it's about 2 degrees above freezing. Yeah. When I was flying it indoors, I couldn't keep my hands on them, they were getting that hot. Just lukewarm here outside. I imagine that'd be different in the summer. But yeah, I like it. Let's get and do some FPV with it. And thanks for watching the build video. Cheers.
We lose ourselves in the spirit of things. We lose our sight when we put our trust in things of this material world, of things that fade away. Yet you keep coming back, 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 keep coming back. Keep coming back, keep coming back, keep coming back, keep coming back. Of things we know. Spirit of things, we lose our sight when we put our trust in things of this material world.